Alright, so I'm going to start the review for the fourth unit. Oh, I'm trying to get comfortable. Okay. Okay, Unit 4 review options. What was the estate system in France? We had the first estate and the second estate and the third estate. The first two estates included the wealthy people and the clergy, the priests. The first and second estate, that's what they included. The third estate included everyone else, which was pretty much 98 to 99% of the population, which created some issues because each estate got a vote. Except for obviously one estate had way more people in it. So, who is in each estate system? I just answered that question. What led France into economic decline before the revolution? Oh my God! Oh, it's a bell. It's not an announcement. Thank God. Thank God. I can't do the announcements. Okay. What led France into economic decline before the revolution? A poor crop season and just really bad choices on the part of Louis XIV. He was just like having a real good time, spending all of France's money on shoes, clothes and stuff. Not all of France's money, obviously. And Versailles was built. Versailles, I do not know what's happening to my skin. I tried to wash it with oatmeal. I thought it would be good for it because I gave my dog an oatmeal bath. And I'm just breaking out everywhere. Okay. So there was the crops that fell apart. The crop seasons, multiple crop season failures. And then on top of that, there was him buying all that stuff and him building Versailles, which ended up being a good political move. He kind of forced all the other nobility that had an opportunity to make any choices. He took them to Versailles, and Versailles was a very nice place. So why would you want to leave when all of your needs are met there? You just can't participate in any of the decision-making processes. Okay. What French philosophers had strong influences over the French Revolution? Voltaire and Rousseau. Let's just stick with those. Stick with those two. Voltaire and Rousseau. There are others, but those two were referenced in the creation of the Declaration of Rights of Man, which is not that different from our Constitution in the U.S. But Voltaire, who wrote Candide, which you all should have read, which I know most of you didn't, and I'm going to find a way to make it harder to not read. And then Rousseau, which we read a little snippet of his stuff too. Who called the National Assembly and why was it called? Louis realized things were not going well, so he called the National Assembly. He knew that the revolution was coming. What was Versailles? Versailles was a beautiful palace that's still there, so if you go to France, you should, if you go to Paris, you should take the hour train outside of Paris to go to Versailles and walk around for a while. The town around it is also very cute, but it's just got these crazy, magnificent rooms and gardens. It's a fun place to walk around, and it's just crazy because people were kind of imprisoned there. There's a movie, I think I saw it on Netflix. I don't know what the name of it is, but it's about creating the gardens in Versailles, which are beautiful and gigantic, and it's a love story too, I think. Why did France go to war with Austria? France went to war with Austria because they thought that they could take Austria's crops and gold and pay for things with it. Thought this will be easy. We'll just take Austria's stuff. So I thought I saw someone at the window. We'll just take all Austria's stuff and settle all of our issues with that. Austria had a lot of friends though. They had made agreements with people hey, if somebody attacks us, you better help us out. And then Russia was we got you, Austria. And then, how was the France going to fight all of that all up over on the east side? It's too much. And they were having issues with the Spanish, too, on the other side. No, not a good idea. Not when your, internal government system is falling apart. What radical group executed King Louis XVI? The Jacobins. Who really... Man, I don't know why I keep thinking there's someone there. The Jacobins, who really, they were really intense. They were extremists. They really loved the guillotine. But then the leader of the Jacobins, Robespierre, ended up dying by guillotine. So it's what goes around comes around. What was used as the most popular tool of the execution at the time? The guillotine. It was also the nicest way to kill someone, right? Imagine if some old person who had been executing people for a long time, who drank a lot maybe, or was just having a bad day. He had to execute 15 people that day, and you were number 14. Is he gonna hit the right spot? Probably not. He's probably gonna crack your skull open a couple times before he actually severs your neck. No one wants to live through that. The guillotine was very precise. You put your head in, it cuts straight across you, and your head just rolls into a basket. I was talking to someone recently, though. I said they wanted to see how long, maybe it was my dad, how long could you still respond after having your head cut off? Because they wanted to see how nice it really was to cut somebody's head off. And this guy said, I don't know what he was getting executed for, but he was a scientist. And he said, I'm going to blink. I'm going to blink until I can't blink anymore. After you cut my head off, I'm going to blink until I can't blink anymore. And he blinked for 2 minutes and 30 seconds. It's a lot of blinking. Somebody caught his head and held it up so everybody could watch, which also sounds kind of gruesome. Okay. Who was the leader of the Jacobins? Robespierre. I mentioned that earlier. Robespierre. Man, my lips look on point right now. I'm having way too much fun with this. Robespierre was the leader of the Jacobins. And, I don't know, I feel like if you all watch Game of Thrones, which is inappropriate to a certain extent, but honestly, the religious group that rises up in season 6, season 7 of Game of Thrones is just like the Jacobins. Just like the Jacobins. Okay. What was the Reign of Terror? It was when the Jacobins were like, we're going to kill everybody who doesn't agree with our philosophies. And they killed everybody. They were killing people, hundreds of people by the day at each guillotine. What is a coup d'etat? A coup d'etat is a French word. It is when you overthrow a government. So you come in, usually with military might, you take over and say, I'm in charge now. And whoever used to be in charge either is expelled from the country. There's a different word for that, not expelled. Forced to leave the country, or they're killed. What is a plebiscite? I want to make sure I'm getting this right, because some of these vocabulary words confuse me. Oh, yeah, okay. So we're getting into Napoleon's time. So after the French Revolution, Napoleon came through, and they were electing consuls, which leads us back to Roman times. So when they elected consuls, in order to elect that, they would have all members of an electorate vote, and that is what a plebiscite is. You also would have all members vote on any changes to documents that are really important, or just bringing anyone else into power. Now, Napoleon got himself voted in, but then he just stayed. So not really democratic, but he was decent for a while. What did Napoleon do for the school system, the taxation system, and the issues surrounding corruption? Napoleon really pushed for there to pretty much be public schools, which is cool. No one was thinking about that at the time. Not that they were accessible to everyone, but they were accessible to a lot of people. Napoleon made the taxation system more fair, I guess you would say, in my context of fair. The rich were taxed more heavily than the poor, which had not been happening before. Or they were just taxed at the same percentage rate as the poor, which is more heavily when it comes to dollar amounts. Issues surrounding corruption, he drained the swamp. He really cleaned house. But then he kind of filled it with people that he liked, which is also corrupt. So that didn't really work that well. What was the Napoleonic Code? The Napoleonic Code was a civil code established that the biggest difference, the biggest impact it had was the fact that it applied to nobility, kings, queens, and priests just as much as it applied to the layman. Okay, someone liked a message I sent them. I'm really distracted right now. Okay. What two fronts did Napoleon fight at the same time? He fought the Spanish guerrillas. You might say guerrilla, but they're guerrillas. It's a certain type of fighting. Spanish knew their ground in Spain very well, so they used that to their advantage, which we did during the American Revolution. The Vietnamese did when they fought the U.S. in the Vietnam War. So, They fought on that front, and then they fought Russia, which was their real downfall. Don't go to Russia in winter. Might be pretty, though. Go to Moscow or St. Petersburg in winter. That would be nice. But don't go to fight anyone. Don't fight a Russian at winter time. You will not win. What two fronts did Napoleon fight at the same time? We did that. Where was Napoleon exiled to? Napoleon was exiled to a French colony, an island colony. People are knocking on the door, but I'm going to finish this before I answer the door. Napoleon... Exile was the word I was thinking of earlier, not expelled, exiled. He was exiled to the island of Elba because he had really failed the French people in this context. What two friends? Exiled. Why would the air... Hi. No. Not right now. I'm sorry. Why would the aristocrats be against democracy? Why would an aristocrat be for democracy? In the current system before democracy, they had all the power. Like, why would they let go of that? There's no reason for them to unless they have to. If they let other people vote, their votes mean less. So they shouldn't want other people to vote because they garner power and wealth because they control everything. If you're an aristocrat, why would you want anyone else to have power? That doesn't make any sense. I mean, unless you're a decent person, you think that everybody should, I don't know, be treated fairly. What part of the Napoleonic French Empire did France lose? The Congress of Vienna. They lost Italy and another part. Austria? Italy and Austria, I think. Pretty sure. What? Let's make sure. Make sure I'm right. Yeah, and Poland. Okay, that was right. I struggle with this stuff. I'm not a big fan of Napoleon the way that I am of like all these government systems we're talking about now. What is the definition of Creole, mulatto, and peninsulares? Creole is if you are part African, part native, and possibly part Spaniard descent, and you are in the Caribbean. Mulatto could be all throughout Central and probably South America as well, and it's a mix between native and Spaniard. And then peninsulares is somebody from the peninsula. The peninsula is Spain. Spain is a peninsula. So these are still, peninsulares is not like a word that's used commonly anymore, but people, like Creole is a language, and mulatto is still way that people identify themselves or others. I don't know if it's a nice way to identify others. Like, I don't know if it's said in a nice way very often, but I've heard people identify themselves as mulatto. I think, I don't know, it's cool to be mixed, so I don't see a problem with that. But I get why it could have a negative distinction because of the way Spaniards treated everyone else. And the way like people with lighter skin still treat everyone else throughout Central and South America. What did the French Declaration of the Rights of Man do for the revolutionary colonies? It gave them something to base the concept of freedom off of to move forward with. It didn't particularly give them freedom, but it gave them like, you all think this back in France, so you better be treating us like this as well. You said man, and we are men as well. Which kind of stinks for women. But women were supposed to be included in that, maybe kind of a little bit, and then not really. How was Brazil's road to independence different than other Latin American countries? Brazil had this like awesome Portuguese ruling elite who kind of bartered for their independence instead of fighting a physical war for it. So there wasn't really much violence in Brazil. There was violence in Brazil, like people were treated horribly while they were a colony, but when it comes to the actual like revolution and them, not even a revolution, I don't know, them becoming a free state, they they got there through diplomacy rather than through violence. What is nationalism? Nationalism, when it started, was people being like, well, there was probably a group of people who were like, let's make Germany, Germany. Then they went around to all the different areas. They went to Bavaria, they went to northern Germany, they went to all these different areas. And they said things. There's someone else at the door, but I'm still not going to answer it. They're going to know I'm talking about them when we get to this video and actually watching it. So they were like, this is what we think it would be like to be German. Do you agree with these concepts and that? And then people would be like, yeah, I agree with that. I'm German. And then nationalism became nationalism. People started to identify, instead of with their family or clan or a little section, they started to identify a region. They started to identify with the whole country, which is still a thing. But then there are still some areas, like, for example, between the Ukraine and Russia, there's Chechnya. People still say I'm Chechnyan, even though they either live in the Ukraine or Russia. Even most Ukrainians that I meet say they're Russian. And then when I say, where in Russia are you from, they say the Ukraine. And I'm like, what? It's a messy situation either way. What makes up modern-day Balkans? That is Eastern Europe. So what used to be like Yugoslavia. I do not want to edit you. That's what used to be Yugoslavia, like the southeastern Europe, which is an area that Russia controlled for a long time as well. They have a tumultuous past. What was the Edict of Emancipation? And how did it change Russia? The Edict of Emancipation was a mechanism by which Tsar Alexander II freed all of the Russian serfs. And it just changed the social structures throughout Russia and made them seem more modern, because people were looking at Russia in the mid-1800s and going, are you still living with a serfdom? You're still living under the feudal system? What is happening? You missed the whole revolution that happened throughout all of Europe. You're behind industrially. You need to catch up. And doing that created space for them to catch up. And they've caught up. They're like a major world power now. We're scared of them, so they're important, obviously. What factors created bonds of nation states? What I mentioned earlier, people kind of sold the concept of like, you are French and this is what it means to be French, and that propaganda surrounding that could bring a nation state together. What is Russification? That was Russia's process of coming to be a nation state and identify as, the window just closed by itself, identify themselves as Russian and not as like all these little tiny places. What is realpolitik? A system of policies or principles based on practice rather than moral or ideological consideration. So, like, you might think this is the right thing to do, but in practice, this is what we have found to be right. So it was following a concept of realism. Oh man, my nails are rough. Following the concept of realism rather than all these ideas of, like, utopia that were coming out. They were like, no one knows what that is. No one's ever been there. It doesn't even exist. So let's get back to what really is happening around here. That's realpolitik. What was the last city to complete the Second Reich and who led Prussia to victory? Paris was the last city that they conquered to complete the Second Reich. And what was his name? Bismarck. Bismarck, there we go. Oh God, why was I struggling with that? Bismarck led Prussia to victory in Paris. The Second Reich, the First Reich was the Holy Roman Empire based out of Austria. The Second Reich was the completion of Prussia. How are Romanticism and realism different? Romanticism would be like that concept of utopia existing or of communism being successful. The concept of communism being successful. Realism is things we had seen in the past that we could now apply to the future. Like, we've seen this before and we can see it occur again. So we consider it to be realistic because we know that it is concrete, whereas the other things were partially imagined and expected according to the way the humans acted, reacted, or functioned. What else? Describe Impressionism. Impressionism was an art form. The leader of it would be Monet. So look at a Monet painting and just describe it. So type Monet into your little, Google search bar and search Monet. Look at his paintings, Monet, M-O-N-E-T. That's Impressionism. Describe what the Industrial Revolution, where did the Industrial Revolution begin? Britain, modern day UK. What industry starts off the Industrial Revolution? Textiles. No matter where you are, if the textile industry is booming, you are starting your Industrial Revolution as a nation. But it looks different, obviously, the progress. They're not going to, Honduras today is not going to go through exactly on point, step by step, what Britain went through when they started the Industrial Revolution. Who provided the cotton for the British to successfully complete the Industrial Revolution? First, India. Without imperialism, the industrialization process would not have worked. Without the industrialization process, no one would have invested in imperialism the same way that we did. Okay. Create an advantages and disadvantages chart of industrialization. I'm going to leave that up to you because we literally just did that. But some great things would be the way that we live today, right? We all live in the city. Some not so great things would be children losing their limbs, anyone losing their limbs or their appendages. The Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire. All types of factory fires, just the way that humans were treated. But then we realized that we needed to make regulations in order to treat people properly, so I guess you have to go through the bad to get to the good. People still aren't treated properly, though, because we just outsource all of our labor. Other countries where they don't have those rules. All right, who suffered most during industrialization? Factory workers. That were coming in, they were like, we'll leave the farm behind. We're going to go live in the city and have a nice life. They got to the city and they realized, this is rough. But then eventually a lot of them made it. Okay. Why was urbanization a product of industrialization? Oh, I didn't say that. That was earlier. I'm messing this up. This is in the wrong order. Urbanization was a product of industrialization. Because people moved into the cities to be able to work industrial jobs. And then population became so high in the cities that's the process of urbanization. In what part of the U.S. were the first rail lines built? Oh, I don't know why. They were built in the East. I was thinking that I might have been trying to ask you guys about a specific place, which Baltimore is where a lot of it started. But really, I just want you to recognize on the east side of the country, they built most of the rail lines, and then they moved west. I don't want to show my nails anymore because they're gross. What is laissez-faire? That is the invisible hand. The idea that everything will just function on its own because supply and demand will force it to function. The only issue with that is people are not always treated well in the process of that because of the lack of regulations. What is capitalism? Capitalism is, how do I explain this in a good way? Capitalism is, it's allowing laissez-faire to take flight, I guess you would say. It's letting private companies make the choices surrounding trade and profit and how much they're going to pay people and how much they're not going to pay people and what they're going to, all of the choices that they make are not being made by the state. They're not being voted on by the people. They're being made by these private companies, which really stinks for a lot of people. But you hope that those leaders of those companies will make good choices for the people, but if they're not economically sound choices, why would they make them, regardless of the way people are being treated? Unless, that's why, if somebody says something really inappropriate, they lose all their ad sponsors because of public opinion. That's the only way to make things change. It's the only reason why people don't treat other people horribly is because of public opinion in this case. At least that's my understanding, especially when it comes to making money. What did Adam Smith mean when he said, as if by an invisible hand, that according to supply and demand, quality and price on the market would be consistently mediated? What is the definition of utopia? No place. No place at all. But the best place in the world, but it doesn't actually exist, but we should always strive for it. Blah, 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 blah. We should always strive for it, even if it's no place. What concept is utilitarianism based on? Striving for the no place. You want to meet somewhere between happiness and utility, right? That's how I live my life. I need this to work, and I need it to make me happy at the same time. That's all I want. I want everything to work and make me happy at the same time. If that's what's happening, then we're succeeding. And that's how we should be evaluating everything. Like, is the prison system working? Is it making people happy? No, it's not working. And it's not making people happy. If we have 2 X's in both those boxes and we need to get rid of it, I don't know why we still have it. Not that I have a solution for that yet, but, you know. List the similarities and differences between communism and socialism. Communism is just a few steps further than socialism. Communism is the idea that the state can not exist, that people can manage everything themselves and will treat each other in a way that everything is equitable. That's not what happens, though, so far in the realistic outlook of communism. Socialism is the idea that things should be distributed equally. So maybe we don't need to get rid of the government, but we need the government to come into play and enforce equal distribution for the welfare of all. So if there's a wide gap between how much money people are making, they're going to ensure that everybody's basic needs are met regardless of that gap, right? So instead of saying you pay $29.99 a month for internet, they're going to say you pay 4% of your paycheck per year for internet. If you make $300,000, if you make $30,000, you pay 4% of your paycheck per year for internet, and that covers the people who are like disabled and can't work, right? So everybody has access to internet. Now the internet is a necessity now, so I'm not going to say that it's not. It is. You want to succeed, you need internet. Which stinks. Who was the father of communism? Karl Marx. I'm sure he was a sweetheart too. Just didn't work. What is a union? It's a group of people that work in the same atmosphere and the same trade. Within that trade, they choose to group together in order to maintain that they are being treated properly and have rights. Usually there's a union and there's an employer, like the teachers union and Detroit Public Schools. So they bargain with each other over like what we get paid and how many days off we have, or how many prep hours we have, how many kids are in our classroom, or how much money we have for supplies, how much money we have for everything. Describe collective bargaining. That's exactly what I just described. You get together as a group and say, we're getting paid $8.25 an hour, but we deserve $9 an hour, and these are the reasons why. If you don't want to pay us that, we're not going to show up for work tomorrow. And I mean, we're all not going to show up to work tomorrow, so you're going to lose profits, which is a good way to do it. How can a strike be productive? Oh, I just said it. Going on strike. There you go. The only cruddy part of that is if somebody breaks the strike line and ruins it for everybody. Who opened the Hull House in Chicago, and what purpose did it serve? Jane Addams opened the Hull House in Chicago. The Hull House was a housing, a place that helped people who were recently immigrating find adequate, like decent housing to live in that was affordable, help them with any language classes they need to take, whether it be for English or German, because in the U.S., English and German were both very popular at the time. Any job training, education, reading and writing, all of that. They would help train people, and after a couple of years, people were well-functioning people in society. So I hope we can, like, create more of that. I used to work for a couple companies that, like, based themselves off of Jane Addams' concept of the Hull House, and it was amazing to see people, like, prep for the citizenship test and get ready and all that wonderful stuff. Make sure that you pay attention to Divergent, too. I'm going to throw some questions in the test on that. Thank you, guys. Oh, my God, it's a whole 30 minutes long. This is insane. I need to go heat up my lunch. Okay, bye.